I'm Teresa, and I considered my life to be going well until 2 months ago. I'm 31 years old, married to Mark for 5 years, and for the past 3 of those years, we've been saving for our own home. In addition to having a respectable amount of change saved up in our joint account, nearly enough for a down payment on a modest home in one of the suburbs, we also rent a modest but pleasant apartment. The dream was that. In any case, I oversee Jensen Corporation, one of those large corporations with glass office buildings and an excessive number of meetings. My staff respects me, and the money is good. Mark is employed by a nearby bank in IT. We've found a comfy pattern, and our schedules work out rather nicely. We always go over to my folks' place for supper on Saturdays. Mom makes too much food every time. Dad's anecdotes about his time working in construction are the same every time. Amber, my younger sister, is also constantly present. I assumed that Amber, 28, who works at a downtown shop, had been unmarried for as long as I could remember. I always thought Amber and I had a close relationship. Growing up, we wore the same clothing, shared secrets, and, even as adults, I still believe that we don't withhold anything from one another. Sometimes she would contact Mark for assistance with tasks around her apartment, such as putting together furniture or repairing a leaking faucet. I never gave it a second consideration. Why would I? He is my spouse, and she is my sister. I had total faith in both of them. 2 months ago, that Saturday seemed like any other. Mom prepared her renowned pot roast. Dad grumbled about the neighbors. Additionally, Amber informed us about a challenging client at the boutique. As we were clearing the table, Amber added, "Oh, by the way, I hate to ask, but my front door lock is acting up. Would you be able to stop over and look at it tomorrow, Mark?" Mark gave me a quick look. I had been longing to visit this farmer's market for weeks, and we had been planning to attend. He said, "Sure, I can help," before I could remind him of our intentions. "That's so great of you," said Amber with a grin and a gentle pat on his arm. "I really appreciate it." I forced myself not to be disappointed, reminding him we were going to that farmer's market tomorrow. Amber responded, "Oh, I'm sorry," but her tone didn't exactly fit what she was saying. "I don't want to mess up your plans." My response was, "No, it's fine. You do it for your family, don't you?" Next weekend, the market will also be present. When she added, "You're the best, sis," Amber quickly embraced me. Mark departed early the following morning to assist Amber. Around midday, he texted me to let me know that it could take some time because the lock was more difficult than he had anticipated. I spent the day cleaning the apartment and catching up on some work. He didn't get home until almost dinner time, claiming they'd had to go buy parts and then grab lunch since the repair took so long. I didn't think much of it at the time. That's how much I trusted them both. In the weeks that followed, though, I started noticing changes in Mark. He was constantly on his phone, texting someone with a small smile on his face. When I'd walk into the room, he'd quickly put the phone down or switch apps. He started working late more often. Our conversations became shorter, more distracted. "Is everything okay?" I asked him one night as we were getting ready for bed. "You seem preoccupied lately." "Just work stuff," he said, not meeting my eyes. "We've got this big system migration coming up. It's stressing everyone out." The weeks passed, and the distance between us grew. We still went to my parents' house every Saturday, but even those dinners felt different. Amber and Mark seemed to share these little glances sometimes, inside jokes I wasn't part of. Once, I caught my mom watching them with this strange expression on her face. Not surprise or concern, but something else I couldn't quite place. As Christmas approached, I threw myself into preparations, hoping the holiday spirit would bridge whatever gap had formed in my marriage. Mark and I picked out gifts for everyone together, and I spent hours wrapping them perfectly. I even found this vintage watch for Mark that he'd been eyeing for months, hoping it would remind him of better times. Christmas Day arrived crisp and bright, with a dusting of snow. Mom and Dad's house was decked out in lights and garlands, and the smell of pine and cinnamon filled every room. Relatives I hadn't seen in months milled around with eggnog and wine, catching up and exchanging presents. Mark and I arrived together, but he drifted away from me almost immediately, helping my dad set up the new sound system he'd gotten. I found Amber in the kitchen, arranging cookies on a platter. "Merry Christmas," I said, handing her the small, perfectly wrapped package containing the silver bracelet I had chosen for her. "Oh, thank you," she exclaimed, giving me a tight hug that felt somehow performative. "I have something for you too, but also a surprise for everyone later." She looked almost giddy, her eyes bright with excitement. "What kind of surprise?" I asked. "You'll see," she said with a secretive smile. "I think it's going to change everything." Everyone gathered around the dining table for Christmas dinner. My parents' home felt warm and festive, but something in the air made me uneasy. Amber kept glancing at Mark with this weird little smile, and he looked nervous, constantly adjusting his collar and avoiding my eyes. After Mom served her traditional ham and all the sides, we settled in to eat. The conversation flowed around me, but I felt disconnected from it all, like I was watching a movie of someone else's family holiday. "I'd like to make an announcement," Amber said suddenly, tapping her glass with a spoon. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at her. "I have some exciting news to share with all of you today." She stood up, practically glowing, and placed a hand on her stomach. My first thought was so innocent, maybe she'd finally met someone. But then I noticed my parents weren't looking surprised at all. They were smiling like they already knew what she was about to say. "I'm pregnant," Amber announced. The room erupted in applause and congratulations. Relatives rushed to hug her, asking questions about due dates and nursery colors. I sat frozen, my mind racing. Amber wasn't dating anyone that I knew of. How could she be pregnant? "That's wonderful news, honey," my mother said. But there was something rehearsed about it. "Who's the father?" My cousin Jake asked the question everyone was thinking. Amber's eyes found mine across the room. "Well, that's the second part of my announcement," she said, her voice softening. "The father is Mark." The world stopped. I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. My husband, the father of my sister's baby? I turned to look at him, waiting for him to laugh, to say it was all a sick joke, but he just sat there staring at his plate. "Mark," I finally managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. He looked up at me then, his face a mask of guilt. "It just happened, Teresa. I didn't plan it. But I have to take responsibility. Just happened." I repeated, my voice rising. "Things like this don't just happen, Mark." I looked around the table. Everyone was watching us like we were some kind of Christmas drama special. My parents didn't look shocked at all. They knew. They'd known all along. "You're all in on this?" I asked, standing up so quickly my chair fell backward. "My sister and husband are having a baby together, and you all knew about it?" "Teresa, please calm down," my mother said sharply. "Don't make a scene." "Don't make a scene?" I laughed, a horrible sound that didn't feel like it came from me. My husband got my sister pregnant, and I'm not supposed to make a scene? "You're overreacting," Amber said. "These things happen. We didn't plan it." "These things happen?" I repeated, incredulous. "No, Amber. Sisters don't sleep with their sisters' husbands. That doesn't just happen." "Don't talk to your sister that way," my father said sternly. "She's going to be a mother. You should be happy for her." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Happy for her? Are you serious right now? "She's been sleeping with my husband." "Teresa," my mother said in that tone she used when I was a child and had embarrassed her in public, "your sister is giving us a grandchild." This is a blessing. I looked from my mother to my father, to Amber, and finally to Mark. None of them seemed to understand the magnitude of their betrayal. It was like I'd stepped into some alternate universe where loyalty meant nothing. "You're all traitors," I said, grabbing my coat and purse. "Every single one of you." "Don't be so dramatic," Amber called after me as I headed for the door. "You're totally overreacting to this." I slammed the door behind me and sat in my car, tears streaming down my face. My phone showed it was only 3:30 p.m. on Christmas Day, the day that had destroyed my life. I drove back to our apartment, Mark's and mine, in a daze. Once there, I moved on autopilot, pulling out suitcases and throwing in my clothes, toiletries, everything I could think of that was mine. I didn't want to be there when Mark came home. I called my best friend Rachel, praying she'd answer on Christmas Day. "Teresa, what's wrong?" she asked immediately, picking up on the distress in my voice. "Mark's been cheating on me with Amber," I sobbed. "She's pregnant. Can I please stay with you for a few days? I can't be here when he gets back." "Oh my God," Rachel gasped. "Of course you can stay. Come over right now." I thanked her through tears, relieved I had at least one person I could still trust. Rachel welcomed me with open arms and a much-needed glass of wine. I told her everything as we sat in her cozy living room, Christmas movies playing unwatched in the background. "You need a lawyer," she said after hearing the whole story. "I know someone who specializes in family law. I'll call her right after Christmas." "Thank you," I whispered, exhausted from crying. "I can't believe this is happening." "Just remember, none of this is your fault," Rachel said firmly. "They betrayed you, not the other way around." That night, as I lay in Rachel's guest bedroom staring at the ceiling, I wondered how my life had fallen apart so completely in a single day. The people I trusted most had been lying to my face for months. The future I'd planned was gone. The days after Christmas passed in a blur. I stayed in Rachel's guest room, barely eating, checking my phone constantly despite myself. Not a single call or text from Mark, my sister, or my parents. It was like I'd been erased from the family, all because I wouldn't smile and accept their betrayal. True to her word, Rachel connected me with her friend Diane, a no-nonsense divorce lawyer who agreed to meet me the day after New Year's. Her office was minimal and practical, just like her approach. "So your husband impregnated your sister?" Diane said, reviewing my notes. "That certainly makes for a clear-cut case of infidelity. What do I do now?" I asked. "We file for divorce immediately," she said. "You mentioned a joint savings account for a house down payment?" I nodded. "We've been saving for 3 years, almost $75,000. Access that account today and move half into a new account under just your name," she advised. "It's marital property and you're entitled to half. But these situations can get messy fast." I did as she suggested, then had Diane draw up the divorce papers. I opted to have them delivered to our apartment by courier rather than facing Mark myself. I couldn't bear to see him, knowing he'd been sleeping with my sister while planning our future together. A week later, Diane called to say Mark had received the papers and agreed to the terms. No fight, no contest. Part of me was relieved, but another part felt even more betrayed, like our marriage had meant so little to him that he could discard it without a struggle. The divorce proceedings moved forward with surprising speed. Each time I had to attend a meeting, Amber was there holding Mark's hand, her pregnancy beginning to show. She'd smile at me with this infuriating smugness, while Mark could barely meet my eyes. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me upset, maintaining a cold silence throughout. By early March, everything was finalized. Our joint savings was split equally. The lease on the apartment remained in Mark's name. I was officially no longer Teresa Wilson, but Teresa Cardenas again, back to my maiden name. Rachel insisted we go out to celebrate what she called my Independence Day. We went to a nice restaurant downtown, ordered expensive wine, and toasted to new beginnings. "To freedom," Rachel said, raising her glass. "To never making the same mistake twice," I replied. That night, feeling lighter than I had in months, I made a decision. I couldn't stay in the city, surrounded by memories and the constant risk of running into Mark, Amber, or my parents. The next morning, I requested a meeting with my boss at Jensen Corporation. "I need a fresh start," I told him. "Is there any possibility of transferring to another branch?" He seemed surprised but understanding. "As a matter of fact, our Seattle office has been looking for someone with your experience." "Would that be too far?" "Seattle? Nearly 1,000 miles away." I smiled. "Perfect. Not at all. Things moved quickly after that. The Seattle office interviewed me via video call, and within 2 weeks I had an offer letter. The position came with a slight promotion and a salary increase. For the first time since Christmas, I felt hopeful. I was packing up my things at Rachel's when my phone rang with my mother's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Teresa, it's Mom," she said when I picked up, her voice simultaneously stern and placating. "I've just heard from Caroline that you're moving away." Of course, news traveled fast through my parents' friends' circle. "That's right," I replied coolly. "And you weren't going to tell us? We're your family, Teresa." I almost laughed at the audacity. "Are you? You didn't act like family when you sided with Amber and Mark after they betrayed me." "You're being childish," she scolded. "These things happen. Family means accepting each other through good times and bad." "No, Mom. Family means not sleeping with your sister's husband." She sighed dramatically. "Well, regardless of how you feel, you should know your sister is getting married in 2 months. She wants you to be her bridesmaid." This time I did laugh a sharp, bitter sound. "You can't be serious." "Of course I'm serious. It would mean so much to her. You need to rise above this pettiness, Teresa. Be the bigger person." In that moment, I realized my mother would never see the situation from my perspective. In her mind, I was the one being unreasonable. "I'm not coming to any wedding," I said firmly. "And I don't want to hear from any of you again." Then I blocked her number along with my dad's and Amber's. It felt like cutting off a gangrenous limb, painful but necessary for survival. A week later, I drove away from the city that had been my home for my entire life, my car packed with the few possessions I'd kept. Rachel had thrown me a small going-away party the night before, and her tearful hug was the only thing I truly regretted leaving behind. Seattle welcomed me with its famous rain and surprising warmth. My new apartment was small but mine alone, with a view of the Space Needle from one window. The office team took me to lunch on my first day, and I found myself smiling genuinely for the first time in months. I threw myself into work with a fervor that surprised even me. Without family dinners, a husband, or local friends yet, I had endless hours to dedicate to projects and learning the ropes of my new position. My boss noticed, and 6 months later, I was promoted again. Occasionally, distant relatives would call with updates I never asked for. Amber had given birth to a boy. My parents were doting grandparents. Mark and Amber had rented a house not far from my parents. Each time, I would listen politely, then change the subject. Those people felt like characters in a story I'd read long ago, not real people who had once been the center of my world. I dated casually but kept everyone at arm's length. The betrayal had left me wary of letting anyone get too close. Instead, I focused on building my career and slowly creating a life I was proud of. 2 years after moving to Seattle, I'd saved enough for a down payment on my own condo. No joint account. No one to betray my trust. Just my name on the mortgage. The day I got my keys, I stood in the empty living room and cried, not from sadness, but from pride. I had rebuilt my life from nothing. 7 years after my divorce, life was better than I ever could have imagined. At 38, I'd been promoted to regional director of our Seattle branch, managed a team of 30 people, and had just finished renovating my condo exactly the way I wanted. I had a small but loyal circle of friends, a healthy savings account, and the freedom to travel whenever I wanted. I hadn't spoken to my family in all those years. Through distant relatives and old hometown friends, I'd heard bits and pieces. Amber had a second child, another boy a year after the first. Mark was working at some tech startup. My parents were heavily involved with their grandchildren. Then the calls started. At first, I ignored the unknown number that kept appearing on my phone. After the 4th call in 2 days, curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Teresa, is that you?" My mother's voice, older but unmistakable, came through the line. "Please don't hang up. We need to talk. It's about your sister." I almost ended the call right there, but something in her tone made me pause. What about her? She's sick, Teresa. Very sick. Terminal. Her voice cracked. The doctors say she doesn't have much time left. The news hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything, Amber was still my sister, and the thought of her dying young shocked me. What's wrong with her? I asked. Cancer, my mother replied vaguely. It's advanced. Mark left her after the diagnosis. He couldn't handle it, the coward. Your father and I are taking care of the boys now. An uneasy feeling crept over me. Why are you calling me now after all these years? My mother hesitated. We need your help, Teresa. Your father and I are getting older. We were hoping you might consider adopting your nephews. I was speechless. After 7 years of silence, this was why they reached out? You want me to adopt my sister's children? The children she had with my ex-husband. I finally managed to say. I knew you'd react this way, my mother sighed. You've always been so unforgiving, Teresa. So vindictive. Her words stung. Despite everything, I'm not being vindictive. I'm being realistic. You can't possibly expect me to uproot my life to raise my sister's children with my ex-husband. Well, my mother said after a pause, if you won't adopt them, the least you could do is provide financial support. We're struggling, Teresa. Your sister's medical bills, the boys' needs. If you could send $1,500 each month, it would make a world of difference. And there was the real reason for the call. I need to think about this, I said cautiously. I'll call you back. I hung up and immediately called my Aunt Linda, my father's sister, who had always been kind to me. Aunt Linda, is Amber really terminally ill? I asked without preamble. Teresa. Oh, it's so good to hear your voice, she said warmly. About Amber, well, she and Mark did divorce, and she hasn't been seen much lately. Your mother's been telling everyone Amber is very ill, but I haven't seen her myself. That wasn't exactly confirmation. I thanked her and made a call I never thought I'd make again, to Mark. He answered on the second ring. Teresa? Is that really you? It's me, I confirmed. I need to ask you something important. Is Amber terminally ill? Terminally ill? He sounded genuinely confused. No, not that I know of. We divorced because she refused to get a job, was spending all our money, and started drinking heavily. Her health problem is alcoholism, not cancer. I closed my eyes, anger and relief mixing strangely in my chest. My mother just called saying Amber was dying, that you left her because of her diagnosis, and that they need money for her medical bills and the boys. Mark was quiet for a while. That is wholly untrue. She won't work, therefore your parents are providing for her financially. However, there isn't a fatal sickness. I was about to end the call when I added, thank you for telling me the truth. Mark said, Teresa, wait, in a hurry. You've been on my mind a lot. I committed the greatest error of my life. We may give it another go now that. No, I interrupted him, smiling in spite of myself. Mark, that will never occur. Goodbye. With this new knowledge, I sat with my suspicions validated. My family was using a fictitious fatal sickness as leverage in an attempt to coerce me into paying them money. The moment has come to confront them directly. I took a day off work, made travel arrangements, and picked up a rental car at the airport. With my pulse racing, I pressed the doorbell. My mom's eyes widened in surprise as she opened the door. She exclaimed, John, over her shoulder after gasping, Teresa. Teresa has arrived. The warning was clear. Hello, Mom, I remarked coolly as I entered without permission. Where's Amber? She's sleeping upstairs. She experiences both good and bad days, my mother said. Ignoring my father's clumsy welcome, I made my way up the stairs. The door to Amber's former bedroom was shut. I rapped once and went in. The smell of alcohol filled the room. Amber appeared pale as she lay on the bed, but she was by no means near death. She hurriedly pulled the blankets up and put on a feeble voice when she spotted me. You arrived, Teresa. I'm quite happy that you will assist us. I gazed at her, my beloved sister, now a stranger who had deceived me in the most heinous way and was still attempting to take advantage of me. When I came downstairs, I saw two little boys playing with Legos. With a start, I recognized them as my nephews. Their eyes were Mark's. I declared boldly, I've decided to adopt the boys. My father and mother looked at each other in horror. Well, that's very generous, according to my father. But maybe it would be better if you just sent us money instead. No, I said. I've made up my mind. Tomorrow, I'll begin the adoption procedure. We must move swiftly. Mom hurriedly remarked, Teresa, let's not rush the adoption. Amber rushed down the steps before I could react, removing any pretense of being sick. Her cheeks reddened with rage and booze, she said, You are not taking my children. My laughter reverberated throughout the suddenly quiet home. And there's our terminal patient, making a miraculous recovery. I looked at my family, the folks who had previously been my entire universe. You need to be embarrassed with yourselves. Making a false claim about a fatal sickness in order to defraud me? Even for you, it's low. With defensiveness, my mother responded, You're rich now. You might assist us with these. Family supports family. No, I firmly stated. Family never betrays family. Families don't try to use kids as pawns, deceive, or control them. I made my decision 7 years ago, and you made yours. I will continue to use mine. After giving my nephews another glance and experiencing a twinge of pity for these defenseless kids trapped in this poisonous atmosphere, I left. My phone rang with Amber's and my mother's texts as I was leaving. However, I didn't read them before deleting them. Rebuilding certain bridges is impossible. Furthermore, some people are undeserving of second opportunities.